This is my son, my heir. I don't need you, Claire, I just need the baby. Put him down, he's not yours. The will doesn't specify the mother has to be alive. This is the story of how a woman running from death found a man who'd been dead inside for 7 years, and together they learned what it means to truly live. Don't stop. Her voice trembled in the darkness, not from pain, but from something she hadn't felt in years: hope. Ethan's hands moved carefully across the wound on her shoulder, his touch so gentle it seemed he feared she might shatter beneath his fingers. "I won't hurt you," she whispered. "Please, don't stop." Ethan Holloway, a man of 53 who had forgotten he still knew how to touch another human being with tenderness, looked down at the woman cradled in his arms. Blood stained his hands. Her blood. Blood she had spilled saving his life. 3 weeks ago they were strangers. Now they were all that remained of each other. But to understand how this journey began, we must return to that rain-soaked night. The night Ethan rode back into Ashwood Creek after 7 years of running from his own ghosts. The rain chased him all the way down the empty road. Ethan Holloway, 53 years old, hair touched with silver skin, weathered like old leather, was nothing more than a shadow of who he'd been. Once the fastest U.S. Marshal in Texas, now just a man returning to the place he'd destroyed 7 years before. His tired horse slowed near the edge of town. Ashwood Creek had always been quiet, but tonight it looked like it had forgotten how to breathe. Every window dark, every street empty, as though the whole town knew a ghost was riding through. Ethan pulled the brim of his hat lower. Rain dripped down his face, mixing with the dust and regret that clung to him like a second skin. He had no reason to come back, no home waiting, no family calling his name, just the memory of what used to be and the weight of what he couldn't save. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the weathered buildings for a brief moment, the general store with its faded sign, the saloon with broken windows, the church at the end of Main Street, its white paint peeling like old scars. Ethan had tried to forget this place, tried to outrun the smoke that rose from his burning home that day, tried to silence the screams that still echoed in his dreams. But some things never leave. They just wait patient as vultures for you to come back. Tonight, as his horse stopped before the old church, Ethan saw something that made him freeze. A woman kneeling on the church steps in the rain. Her belly was swollen, unmistakably pregnant. Blonde hair plastered to her face. Arms wrapped around herself, trembling. Ethan dismounted slowly, each step deliberate, careful. He made no sound beyond the squelch of mud beneath his boots. The woman looked up, eyes green as spring grass filled with tears and rain. When she saw him, she flinched, drawing back like a wounded animal. "Please." Her voice cracked, barely audible over the storm. "Please don't hurt me." Ethan stopped. He raised both hands slowly, palms out showing he meant no harm. He said nothing, just stood there in the rain, waiting. The woman stared at him, searching his face for danger, for cruelty, for the violence she'd learned to expect from men. She found none, only a tired, weathered man standing in the downpour, hands, empty eyes, sad. Lightning flashed again. In that brief illumination, Ethan saw more clearly. Bruises on her arms, purple and yellow, in various stages of healing. Her lip was split recently. Her dress torn at the shoulder, feet bare, covered in mud and small cuts. And around her eyes, the unmistakable marks of fingers that had gripped too hard. "He's coming," she whispered. "He'll find me. He always finds me." Ethan still said nothing. He shrugged off his long coat, the heavy canvas poncho that had kept him dry, and stepped forward slowly, telegraphing every movement. The woman tensed, but didn't run. Ethan draped the coat over her shoulders, gentle, like she was made of glass. She gasped, surprised by the warmth, by the kindness. "Ma'am," Ethan said, his voice rough from days of silence. "Church is locked, but my place ain't far. I can't." She shook her head, water flying from her hair. "He'll kill you if he finds me with you." Ethan looked at her for a long moment. His gray eyes held something ancient, pain, regret, and beneath it all a fierce determination. "Been dead a long time, ma'am," he said quietly. "Ain't much he can do to a ghost." The woman stared at him. In that moment, under the crying sky, two strangers carrying unspoken wounds recognized something in each other, a shared language of loss. She nodded, small, trembling. Ethan helped her stand, careful not to touch more than necessary, his hand under her elbow, supporting without grasping. And they walked into the darkness, neither knowing that behind them a shadow moved in the church doorway. Someone watching, someone waiting. The road to Ethan's ranch stretched 5 miles into the hills. He placed the woman on his horse, then walked alongside, leading the animal by its reins. No words passed between them. Only the sound of rain, the squelch of mud, the woman's labored breathing. Ethan didn't ask her name, didn't ask where she came from or who she was running from. Questions could wait. Right now, she needed shelter, safety. That was enough. The woman gripped the saddle horn, her knuckles white. Every few minutes her face would contort with pain, and she'd bite her lip to keep from crying out. The baby protesting this rough journey. After what felt like hours, she spoke. "What's your name?" Ethan didn't look up from the muddy road. "Ethan." "I'm Claire." He nodded, still didn't look. "Thank you, Ethan." He made no reply, just kept walking one foot in front of the other like he'd done for 7 years, moving forward because stopping meant remembering. The rain began to ease. The clouds remained thick and black, but the downpour thinned to a drizzle. Cold wind swept across the open land, carrying the scent of wet earth and sage. They crested a small hill. Below, Ethan's ranch came into view. A modest wooden house weathered gray by years of sun and storm. A barn leaning slightly. Fencing that had seen better days. Simple. Lonely. Like the man who lived there. Claire looked at the house and felt something loosen in her chest. A place to rest, at least for tonight. But as they drew closer, she saw something that made her heart clench. Beside the main house stood the ruins of another building burned long ago, but the scars remained. Blackened support beams jutted from the ground like broken ribs. Piles of charred wood and shattered brick. And there in front of the ruins, 2 small wooden crosses. Claire understood immediately. She didn't need to ask. Ethan stopped the horse. He didn't look toward the crosses. Never did. "They were in there," he said, his voice flat as stone. "I wasn't." Claire looked at him, waiting. "How long ago?" she whispered. 7 years, 2 months, 16 days. The precision in his answer told her everything. He counted each day, every single day they'd been gone. Claire placed a hand on her swollen belly. The baby kicked, a reminder of life continuing despite everything. "I lost a child too," she said, her voice breaking. "My boy Daniel. He was 2. My husband. He threw him down the stairs. Said he cried too much." Ethan finally looked up. His eyes met hers. 2 people who'd lost what they loved most. 2 people who understood a grief that had no words. No more needed to be said. They knew. Ethan helped her down from the horse, led her to the house, closed the door behind them, locked it tight. Tonight, even if only for tonight, Claire would be safe. Inside the house was sparse to the point of asceticism. 1 bed neatly made, a table with a single chair, a fireplace cold, no decorations, no color, just rough wood and dust, the home of a man who existed rather than lived. Ethan knelt before the fireplace, building a fire with practiced efficiency. He didn't speak, just worked his movements, slow, methodical, almost meditative. Claire sat in the lone chair, hugging her belly, watching him. "You don't talk much," she observed. Ethan shrugged. "Ain't much to say. Most men, they talk a lot, especially when they want something." He looked at her, then really looked. "I don't want nothing, ma'am." "Claire. My name is Claire." "Claire." The fire caught flames licking up through the kindling. Warmth began to spread through the cold room. Ethan stood and disappeared into a back room. He returned with a blanket, worn but clean, and offered it to her. "You take the bed. I'll sleep by the fire." "No, I can't take your bed." "You're carrying a child. You take the bed." His tone left no room for argument, not harsh, just factual. Claire accepted the blanket. Her fingers brushed his as she took it. Both flinched at the contact, but he didn't pull away. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. Ethan turned to stare into the fire. The silence stretched so long Claire thought he wouldn't answer. Then very quietly he said, "Because I failed someone else once." "Who?" Silence. "Someone who deserved better than my fear." Claire understood. The two crosses outside, his wife and child, the ones he couldn't save. "I won't fail again," Ethan said, still gazing into the flames. He stood, took his rifle from above the door, and settled into the chair near the entrance. "Sleep, Claire. I'll keep watch." "You think he'll come tonight?" "Don't know. But if he does, he ain't getting in." Claire lay down on the bed. For the first time in months, she was on an actual bed under a real roof next to a man who didn't make her afraid. But sleep didn't come easily, because she knew Samuel would find her. He always did. Outside, the rain continued its soft percussion against the roof. Inside, two damaged souls sat in silence, each carrying wounds that would never fully heal. Midnight came. Claire woke gasping, sweat soaking through her clothes despite the cool air. The nightmare always the same. Samuel standing over her eyes, cold as winter steel. Hand around her throat. Voice soft, terrifyingly soft. "You can't run from me, Claire. You're mine till death do us part." She sat up, clutching her belly, shaking. Ethan was still by the door. He hadn't slept, head resting against the wall, rifle across his lap, but his eyes were open. Hearing Claire's distress, he looked over. "You all right?" Claire shook her head. Couldn't lie. "Nightmare." She nodded. Ethan rose, went to the small kitchen area, poured water into a cup, brought it to her. Sat on the edge of the bed, keeping distance between them. Claire drank. Her hands still trembled. "He used to," she began, then stopped. "You don't have to tell me," Ethan said. "I need to. I need someone to know." Ethan waited, patient as stone. "His name is Samuel Blackwood. Owns half the county east of here. On paper he's a gentleman. Church every Sunday. Smiles at children. Donates to charity." She paused, swallowed hard. "But at home he's different. He doesn't yell, never raises his voice. That's what makes it worse. He's always so calm, so controlled." Claire looked down at her hands, at the faint scars there. "The first time he hit me, he whispered. Said, 'That hurt me more than it hurt you.' Like it was my fault he had to do it." Ethan's jaw tightened. His hands clenched. But he said nothing, just listened. "I tried to leave 3 times. The first time he found me in 2 days. Brought me back. Locked me in the cellar for a week. No light, no food, just water. Said I needed to reflect on my vows. Second time I made it to the next town. He tracked me down, dragged me back by my hair through the main street. No one helped. They all knew him, respected him." Ethan's knuckles were white now, but his voice remained calm. "And the law? The sheriff works for him. The judge dines at his table. The priest takes his donations. No one will help me because he owns them all." Claire's hand moved to her belly. "When I found out I was pregnant, I thought maybe he'd change. But it got worse. He said the baby made me ugly. Said I was useless. Said if I gave him another worthless child, he'd—" She couldn't finish. Didn't need to. Ethan understood. "He ain't getting you or that baby," Ethan said, his voice absolute. "You don't know him. He won't stop." "Neither will I." The words hung in the air between them. A promise, an oath. Claire felt tears coming. Why do you care? I'm nothing to you, a stranger." "You're someone who needs help. That's all I need to know." "But you could die. He has men, guns, money." "I've been ready to die for 7 years." Ethan's voice was quiet, but absolute. "Today's as good as any. But I ain't letting him take you." Claire began to cry then, not from fear, from relief, from the overwhelming sensation of being protected rather than possessed. There was a difference, a crucial life-saving difference. Samuel had held her, but that was control ownership, a cage. Ethan protected her, but that was shelter safety, a wall between her and harm. She could feel the difference in every breath. After a long moment, Ethan spoke again. "My wife, Emma. She was pregnant too when she died." Claire looked up, waiting. "Our daughter Lucy was 11. Emma was carrying our second. A boy, the doctor said." He stopped. Pain etched deep in every line of his face. "I was chasing a man. Outlaw had killed a family down in El Paso. I tracked him for 3 weeks, caught him, brought him to justice." The guilt in his voice was a physical thing, heavy, crushing. "While I was gone, the Dalton gang hit our town, burned houses, killed folks. My house was one of them. By the time I got back, there was nothing left, just ash and the bodies." Claire's hand reached out, hesitated, then touched his arm. Gentle. "It wasn't your fault. I wasn't there. That makes it my fault. You were doing your job, protecting others. My job was to protect them. I failed." Claire understood then. The impossible choice. Save strangers or stay home with family. He'd chosen duty and lost everything. "That's why you're helping me," she said softly. "You're trying to save them through me." Ethan didn't deny it, didn't confirm it, just sat in silence. But they both knew it was true. They sat together in the darkness, two strangers connected by parallel traumas, two people who'd lost what they couldn't replace. For the first time in 7 years, Ethan felt someone understood. And for the first time in years of fear, Claire felt safe. Suddenly the sound of hoofbeats, distant but approaching. Ethan was on his feet instantly, rifle in hand. He extinguished the oil lamp, plunging the room into darkness. "It's him," Claire whispered, trembling. "He found me." Ethan pushed her gently toward the back of the room, placing himself between her and the door. "Stay behind me." The hoofbeats stopped outside. Voices, men talking, 2, maybe 3. A knock on the door, firm but not violent. "Ethan Holloway," a voice somewhat familiar. "It's Doc Miller. Open up." Ethan relaxed, slightly lowered the rifle. He moved to the door, opened it a crack. Dr. Robert Miller, 62 years old, stood there soaked from the rain with 2 other men behind him. Townspeople Ethan recognized. Good men. "Ethan," Doc said, breathing hard, "we need to talk. Samuel Blackwood's got men out looking for his wife, says she stole from him, got the sheriff involved." Ethan looked past Miller at the 2 men, then back at Claire, who'd gone pale. "She ain't no thief," Ethan said. "I know that. You know that. But Blackwood's got papers, marriage license. He's got legal rights to her." Doc continued, his voice heavy. "In the eyes of the law, she's his property, and he wants her back." Ethan closed the door, turned to Claire. Their eyes met. They both knew the truth. The law was on Samuel's side. Morality wasn't. But the law had guns, badges, power. "What do we do?" Claire whispered. Ethan looked out the window. The sky was beginning to lighten. Dawn approaching. "We run," he said, "before they come." Claire lay back down, but sleep was impossible now. Fear thrummed through her veins like electricity. Ethan stood by the window, watching the darkness fade. Planning, calculating. 3 days to the territorial border. Once across Blackwood had no jurisdiction. Claire would be free. 3 days across rough country with a pregnant woman being hunted. The odds weren't good. But Ethan had faced worse, and this time failure wasn't an option. Dawn broke gray and cold. Ethan moved with quiet efficiency, preparing for the journey. 2 horses, food for 3 days, water, ammunition, blankets. Claire stood watching, feeling useless. Her swollen belly made everything difficult. She couldn't help much. "Where will we go?" she asked. "North, toward the territory line. Once we cross Blackwood, ain't got jurisdiction." "How far?" 3 days. Hard riding." Claire looked down at her belly. 3 days on horseback with the baby protesting every mile. "I can do it," she said, voice more determined than she felt. Ethan looked at her, nodded. He didn't doubt her. Doc Miller returned alone this time. His face was grim. "Blackwood's got 8 men, hired guns most of them. He's offering $500 reward for anyone brings her back." "Dead or alive?" Ethan asked, voice flat. "Alive. He wants her alive." Doc looked at Claire with pity. "And the baby?" Claire felt ice in her stomach. "Why does he want the baby so badly?" "Heir," Doc said quietly. "You give him a son, and he controls the inheritance. His father's will stipulates a male heir for the full estate." So that was it. Not love, not family, money, control. The baby was just another piece of property to Samuel. "He's already sent men to check all the roads," Doc continued. "You can't take the main routes." "Wasn't planning to. There's a canyon path, old Apache trail, rough, but it'll take you north without being seen." Ethan nodded. He knew that path. Dangerous terrain, but hidden. Doc handed Ethan a small bag. "Medical supplies. For her. And if the baby comes early, you'll need these." The implication hung heavy. This journey could force an early labor, could kill Claire or the child, or both. Ethan accepted the bag. "Thank you, Doc." Miller looked at his old friend. "You don't have to do this, Ethan. You could just let the law handle it." "Law ain't on her side." "Law's the law." "Law ain't justice." Silence. Doc knew he was right, but couldn't say so aloud. "Be careful, old friend," Doc said, then left. When he was gone, Claire spoke. "You should let me go alone. I can't ask you to risk your life for me." Ethan continued preparing, didn't stop working. "You ain't asking. I'm choosing." "But why? You don't know me. I'm nothing to you." Ethan stopped, turned to face her. His gray eyes held depths she couldn't fathom. "Someone needs help. That's reason enough." Claire stared at him, understanding that some men in this world helped not because they expected reward. They helped because it was right. Ethan Holloway was one of those men. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded. "Let's ride." The morning air was crisp, cutting through their clothes like knives. Ethan saddled both horses with practiced hands, checking the cinches twice, securing the supplies. Claire watched him work, memorizing every careful movement. This man who'd appeared in the rain like an answer to a prayer she hadn't known how to speak. Martha Brennan appeared at the edge of the property just as they were about to leave. She was 54, gray-haired, with the kind of weathered face that spoke of hard years survived. She owned the boarding house in town, though few knew she'd once been where Claire was now. Running, hiding, praying for someone to see. "Thought you might need this," Martha said, handing Claire a bundle wrapped in cloth. Inside was bread, dried meat, a canteen of water, and a hand-knitted shawl. "Martha, I can't." "You can, and you will." The older woman's eyes were fierce. "I know what you're running from, honey. I've been there. You run and you don't look back, you hear me?" Claire nodded, throat tight. Martha turned to Ethan. "You bring her back safe, you understand. We've lost too many already." "Yes, ma'am." Martha pulled Claire into a quick, hard embrace. "Be strong, girl. You're stronger than you know." Then she was gone, disappearing back toward town before anyone could see her there. Ethan helped Claire mount her horse. She moved slowly, awkwardly, her belly making even this simple task difficult. But she gritted her teeth and pulled herself up, settling into the saddle with only a small gasp of discomfort. He swung onto his own horse with the ease of a man who'd spent more of his life in the saddle than out of it. For a moment, they sat there, two riders on the edge of a dangerous journey, the morning sun just breaking over the eastern hills. Ethan looked back at his ranch one last time, at the small house where he'd lived alone for 7 years, at the 2 wooden crosses standing sentinel over the ashes of his old life. The roses he'd planted there last spring were blooming now, red and white petals bright against the dark earth. "Emma," he said softly, though Claire couldn't hear. "Lucy, I know I failed you, but maybe I can get this one right." Then he turned his horse north and nudged it forward. Claire followed. They rode in silence for the first hour, leaving Ashwood Creek behind. The town disappeared into the distance, swallowed by the rolling hills and sparse trees. The land here was hard, unforgiving. rocks and scrub brush with occasional stands of twisted juniper, the kind of country that didn't suffer fools or the unprepared. The sun climbed higher, and with it came the heat. By mid-morning, Claire was sweating beneath her layers, the shawl Martha had given her tied around her waist. Every movement of the horse sent a jolt through her body, and she felt the baby shifting restlessly inside her, as uncomfortable as she was. Ethan glanced back periodically, checking on her without speaking. Each time she gave him a small nod, determined not to complain. She'd asked for this, begged for it really, when she'd run away from Samuel's house 3 nights ago. She wouldn't slow them down now. Around noon, Ethan found a small outcropping of rocks that provided some shade. He helped Claire down from her horse, steadying her when her legs nearly buckled beneath her. "Drink," he said, handing her his canteen. She drank deeply, the water warm and metallic but precious. When she tried to hand it back, he shook his head. "Finish it. I got more." While she drank, he pulled dried meat from his saddlebag and offered her half. They ate in silence, sitting in the meager shade, the horses standing nearby with their heads down. "How much farther today?" Claire asked. "Few more hours. There's a canyon up ahead. We'll follow it north. Harder terrain, but nobody'll see us." She nodded, gathering her strength for the afternoon ride. Before they mounted again, Ethan did something unexpected. He pulled a small leather pouch from his pocket and handed it to her. "What is this?" "Laudanum. Doc Miller gave it to me years back. For pain. If it gets too bad." Claire looked at the pouch, then back at him. "I'll be fine." "I know. But just in case." She tucked it into her dress pocket, touched by the gesture. The afternoon was harder than the morning. The terrain grew rougher as they entered the canyon, the path narrowing to barely more than a deer trail in places. The walls rose steep on either side, red stone that seemed to trap and magnify the heat. Claire's back ached, her legs cramped. The baby kicked and squirmed, protesting this rough treatment. But she said nothing, just gripped the saddle horn and endured. Ethan saw it all. Saw the way she winced with each jolt. Saw her biting her lip until it bled again. Saw the determination in the set of her shoulders. This woman had steel in her spine. Whatever she'd survived with Samuel Blackwood had forged her into something that wouldn't break easy. As the sun began its descent toward the western hills, painting the canyon walls in shades of orange and gold, Ethan finally called a halt. They'd reached a wider section of the canyon where a small cave cut into the northern wall, its entrance partially hidden by a stand of scrub oak. "We'll camp here tonight," he said. Claire practically fell from her horse. Ethan caught her, steadying her against his chest for a moment before she found her footing. She could feel his heart beating strong and steady, and for just that moment she let herself lean into his strength. "Thank you," she whispered. "Come on, let's get you settled." He helped her into the cave while he tended to the horses, unsaddling them and hobbling them where they could graze on the sparse grass. When he returned, he carried both saddles and their supplies. The cave was small but dry, the floor covered in sand that had blown in over countless years. Ethan spread his bedroll in the back corner, then started gathering wood for a fire. "No fire," Claire said suddenly. He looked at her. "The smoke. If they're tracking us." Ethan nodded slowly. "Smart. It'll be cold tonight." "I know." He put the wood aside and instead arranged the saddles to provide some shelter from the wind that would blow through once the sun set. Then he sat down near the cave entrance, rifle across his knees, eyes scanning the darkening canyon. Claire lowered herself carefully to the bedroll, every muscle protesting. She wanted to sleep, but her mind wouldn't let her. "Ethan, yeah, tell me about them, your wife, your daughter." He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. The canyon fell into shadow and stars began to emerge in the narrow strip of sky visible between the walls. Finally he spoke. Emma was sunshine. Even on the darkest days she'd sing. Didn't matter if she knew the words or not. Just sang. A small smile touched his lips, painful but genuine. Lucy was like her mother, always laughing, always asking questions. "Why is the sky blue? Papa, where do stars go in the day? Do horses dream?" He stopped the pain too much. "The day I left chasing that outlaw Lucy, asked me not to go. Said she had a bad feeling. I told her I'd be back in a week. Kissed her forehead. Promised. His voice broke slightly. I kept my promise. I came back in a week. But they were already gone. Claire reached out in the darkness, found his hand, held it. The first time she'd initiated touch. You couldn't have known. I should have listened to her. Should have stayed. Then someone else would have died. That outlaw would have killed more families. But my family would be alive. Claire understood the impossible mathematics of heroism. Save strangers, lose loved ones. Every lawman's nightmare. They sat in silence as full darkness fell. The temperature dropped quickly, and Claire pulled the blanket and Martha's shawl tight around her shoulders. Even so, she shivered. Ethan noticed. Without a word, he moved from the entrance to sit beside her close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. For warmth, he said simply. I know. Claire shifted, leaning slightly against his shoulder. He stiffened for just a moment, then relaxed, accepting the contact. Thank you for telling me about them, she said. Thank you for listening. They sat that way for hours, neither sleeping, both keeping watch in their own way. Claire watched the stars wheel slowly overhead through the cave mouth. Ethan watched the shadows, alert for any movement, any sound that didn't belong. Somewhere in the deep hours of the night, Claire finally spoke the fear that had been growing in her heart. What if he finds us before we reach the border? Then we deal with it. There are 8 of them. You're just one man. Ain't about numbers. It's about who's willing to go furthest. You'd die for me, for a stranger. Ethan was quiet. Then, you ain't a stranger anymore, Claire. Those words settled over her like a benediction. She closed her eyes, feeling safer than she had in years, despite being hunted through a canyon in the middle of nowhere. If something happens to me, she said, promise me you'll take care of the baby. Raise him. Don't let Samuel have him. Nothing's going to happen to you. Promise me, Ethan. He looked at her, saw the desperation, the fear, and the trust. I promise, he said, and meant it with every fiber of his being. Claire rested her head on his shoulder, exhausted, safe. They sat together until she fell asleep, Ethan watching over her as the night deepened and the canyon filled with the sounds of small creatures moving through the darkness. He didn't sleep. Couldn't. Not while she needed protection. Not while Samuel Blackwood's men might be out there searching. As dawn began to paint the eastern sky with streaks of pale gold, Ethan gently shifted Claire so she lay more comfortably on the bedroll. She murmured in her sleep but didn't wake. He covered her with both blankets and moved back to the cave entrance. Another day, another stretch of dangerous country to cross, and somewhere behind them 8 men with guns and money and no conscience hunting the woman sleeping in his care. Ethan checked his rifle, counted his ammunition. 18 rounds, not enough if it came to a fight, but maybe enough to make them think twice. He looked back at Claire, her face peaceful in sleep, one hand resting protectively over her belly. She'd taken a bullet for him in his dreams in the flash forward that had opened this story. Would she really? Would this woman he barely knew sacrifice herself for him? The thought terrified him more than Samuel Blackwood's men ever could. Because if she did, if she gave her life for his, he'd have failed again. Failed to protect someone who depended on him. Failed the same way he'd failed Emma and Lucy. Not this time, he whispered to the dawn. This time I'll be there. This time I won't fail. The morning light grew stronger, touching the canyon walls and painting them shades of red and gold. A new day, a new chance. And still so far to go before they reached safety. Claire woke to sunlight streaming through the cave mouth and the smell of coffee. For a moment, disoriented, she couldn't remember where she was. Then it all came back. The rain. The church steps. Ethan. The long ride into the canyon. She sat up carefully, her body stiff and aching from sleeping on the hard ground. Ethan crouched near the cave entrance, a small fire burning in a depression he'd carved in the sand. A battered tin pot sat balanced on rocks over the flames. "Thought you said no fire," she said, voice hoarse. "Dawn smoke dissipates fast, won't be seen from a distance, and you need something hot." He poured coffee into a tin cup and brought it to her. Their fingers touched as she took it, and this time neither of them flinched. The coffee was strong and bitter, but it was warm, and Claire wrapped both hands around the cup, savoring the heat. She sipped slowly, watching Ethan move with quiet efficiency, breaking down their small camp, preparing the horses. "How long was I asleep?" "Few hours." "Did you sleep at all?" He didn't answer, which was answer enough. Claire drank her coffee and ate the dried meat he offered, forcing herself to chew and swallow, though her stomach rebelled. She needed strength for the day ahead, needed to keep the baby strong. When she stood, her legs nearly buckled. Ethan was there instantly, steadying her. "I'm fine," she said. "Just stiff. Take your time. We're not in a rush yet." Yet. The word hung between them. Samuel's men were coming. It was only a matter of when they'd catch the trail. They rode out as the sun cleared the canyon walls, following the narrow path deeper into the maze of stone. The morning was cooler than the previous afternoon had been, but Claire knew the heat would come soon enough. Her body settled into the rhythm of the horse's movement, though every step still sent jolts of discomfort through her. The baby was restless today, shifting and kicking more than usual. She placed a hand on her belly, trying to soothe the little life inside her. "Not much longer," she whispered. "Just hold on a little longer." Around mid-morning, the canyon opened into a wider valley. A thin stream ran through it, barely more than a trickle, but it was water. Ethan led them to it and helped Claire down from her horse. "We'll rest here. Let the horses drink." While the animals drank, Ethan refilled their canteens. Claire knelt by the stream, splashing cool water on her face and neck. It felt like heaven. "Can I ask you something?" she said. Ethan looked at her. "Last night you said I wasn't a stranger anymore. What am I then?" He was quiet for a long moment, watching the water flow over the rocks. "Someone I'm responsible for." "Is that all?" His gray eyes met hers, and she saw something in them she couldn't quite name. "No, that ain't all." Before she could ask what he meant, a sound made them both freeze. Hoofbeats, distant but unmistakable. Multiple riders. Ethan was in motion instantly. He grabbed both horses' reins, leading them quickly into a stand of cottonwoods that grew along the stream bank. He pulled Claire down beside him, one hand on her shoulder, keeping her low. They waited, barely breathing. The hoofbeats grew louder, closer. Through the trees, Claire caught glimpses of movement. Riders. At least 6 or 7 of them. Nearly all of Blackwood's men. "Spread out," a rough voice called. "Check every ravine. Blackwood wants her found before nightfall." Claire's breath caught. Samuel's men. They were closer than she'd thought possible. Ethan's hand tightened on her shoulder, a silent message. "Stay quiet. Stay still." The riders passed within 50 yards of where they hid. Claire could hear their horses splashing through the stream, hear the men talking. "Fool woman, running off in her condition, probably dead in a ditch somewhere. Blackwood don't care if she's dead, just wants the baby. How's he gonna get a baby from a dead woman? Cut it out, I reckon. Seen it done once down in Mexico." Claire felt bile rise in her throat. Ethan's arm came around her, holding her steady, holding her together. The riders moved on, their voices fading into the distance. But Ethan didn't move, didn't let her move for a long time after. Only when the canyon had been silent for at least 10 minutes did he finally ease his grip. "They're gone," he said quietly. Claire was shaking. "They'll cut the baby out of me." "No, they won't, because they ain't getting you." She turned to look at him, this man who'd appeared in her life like some kind of guardian angel. "How can you be so sure?" "Because I won't let them." The simple certainty in his voice steadied her. She nodded, taking a deep breath. "We need to move," Ethan said. "They'll circle back eventually. We need distance." They rode hard for the next several hours, pushing deeper into the canyon system. The terrain grew rougher, the path less defined. Several times they had to dismount and lead the horses over sections of broken rock. By early afternoon, Claire was struggling. The heat, the constant jarring, the fear it was all taking its toll. She felt dizzy, nauseous. Her vision kept blurring at the edges. "Ethan," she said, her voice sounding far away to her own ears. "I don't feel—" She never finished the sentence. The world tilted sideways, and she felt herself falling. Ethan caught her before she hit the ground. He lowered her gently, supporting her head, calling her name. But Claire couldn't answer. The darkness pulled her down, and she let it take her. When she woke, she was lying in shade. A wet cloth rested on her forehead. Ethan knelt beside her, his face tight with worry. "There you are," he said softly. "You scared me." "What happened?" "You fainted. Been out maybe 20 minutes. Claire tried to sit up, but the world spun. Ethan's hand on her shoulder kept her down. "Easy. Don't rush it. The baby. Doc Miller's bag had a listening tube. I checked. Heart's beating strong." She closed her eyes, relief flooding through her. "Thank God. When's the last time you ate something substantial, more than dried meat?" Claire couldn't remember. Before she'd run from Samuel's house. 5, maybe 6 days ago. Hard to remember exactly. Thought so. Ethan moved to his saddlebag and returned with a small package wrapped in cloth. Inside was half a loaf of bread and a piece of cheese. "Martha must have packed this. Eat it. All of it." Claire wanted to protest to say he should save it, but her body overruled her mind. She ate slowly, forcing herself to chew thoroughly to keep it down. The simple food tasted better than anything she'd had in months. While she ate, Ethan checked their surroundings. They were in a small box canyon walls rising steep on 3 sides. The only way in or out was the narrow path they'd come through. "This is good," he said. "Defensible. We'll stay here till evening, let you rest. Travel by night when it's cooler." "Is that safe? Safer than you collapsing again?" He settled down beside her close enough that she could lean against him if she wanted. After a moment she did, resting her head on his shoulder. "Tell me more about Emma and Lucy," she said. Ethan was quiet. Then, "Why? Because I need to know that good things existed once, that they can exist again." So he told her. About how he'd met Emma at a church social, how she'd laughed at his awkward attempts at conversation. About their wedding day, simple and perfect. About the day Lucy was born, how he'd held that tiny life in his big rough hands and wept. She had Emma's eyes, he said, green like spring leaves, and she was smart, so damn smart. Learned to read before she was 5. Always had her nose in some book. What was her favorite? Treasure Island. Must have read it to her 100 times. She wanted to be a pirate. He smiled at the memory. Used to tie a bandana around her head and run around with a stick for a sword. Claire smiled too, imagining this little girl who'd never gotten the chance to grow up. She sounds wonderful. She was. They sat in silence for a while, the afternoon heat gradually easing as the sun moved lower in the sky. Claire dozed fitfully, waking periodically to find Ethan still there, still watching, still keeping guard. When she woke fully, the sun was setting, painting the canyon walls in shades of red and purple. Ethan had a small fire going and something that smelled surprisingly good cooking in a pan. "What is that?" "Rabbit. Snared it while you were sleeping. Figured you needed real food." Claire's mouth watered. When he handed her a portion on a tin plate, she ate it slowly, savoring every bite. The meat was tender, seasoned with wild herbs he must have found nearby. "This is delicious. Emma taught me to cook. Said a man ought to be able to feed himself properly." She was right. After they'd eaten, Claire felt stronger than she had all day. The food and rest had helped, but as the darkness deepened, a new fear crept in. "Ethan." "Yeah, I'm scared." He looked at her, waiting. "What if we don't make it? What if Samuel catches us and what if something happens to me? Nothing's going to happen to you. But if it does, if I die, or if they take me and I can't escape again." She placed both hands on her belly. "Promise me you'll save the baby, even if you can't save me. Promise me you'll get him away from Samuel." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Claire, please, I need to hear you say it." He moved closer, took both her hands in his. "I promise. But it won't come to that. We're going to make it, both of you." "How can you know?" Because I won't allow any other outcome." The fierce determination in his voice made her believe, at least for the moment, that he could actually will it into being. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything, for being here when I needed someone, for not turning me away. Where else would I be?" It was such a simple question, but it held depths she was only beginning to understand. This man had been alone for 7 years, carrying his grief like stones in his pockets. And yet when she'd appeared desperate and afraid, he'd taken her in without hesitation. "Why did you really come back to Ashwood Creek?" she asked. Ethan stared into the fire. "Thought maybe I could finally let them go. Emma and Lucy. Thought maybe enough time had passed that I could stand to look at those graves without wanting to dig myself in beside them. Had enough time passed? No. Then I found you on those church steps, and I realized it doesn't matter how much time passes. The guilt don't fade. You just learn to carry it better. It wasn't your fault they died. Wasn't it I chose to leave, chose duty over family? You chose to protect people who needed protecting. That's not a sin. That's what good men do." "Good men don't let their families burn." Claire turned to face him fully. "Good men don't blame themselves for things they couldn't control. Emma and Lucy wouldn't want you to carry this guilt. They'd want you to live." "How do you know?" "Because that's what love does. It wants happiness for the beloved, not endless suffering." Ethan looked at her, really looked, and something shifted in his eyes. "You're wise beyond your years." "I've had to be. When you're married to a man like Samuel, you either learn fast or you don't survive." "Tell me how you survived him." So she did. She told him about the early days when Samuel had been charming, attentive, how the first time he'd hit her she'd been so shocked she couldn't even react, how he'd cried afterward, begged forgiveness, promised it would never happen again. "But it did happen again," she said, "and again. And each time he had a reason. I'd burned dinner. I'd spoken out of turn. I'd looked at another man. There was always something I'd done wrong." "That's how they work," Ethan said. "Make you think it's your fault. Make you think you deserve it." For a long time I believed him. Believed I was worthless, stupid, clumsy. Everything he said I was. She paused. "Then I got pregnant the first time. With Daniel." Her voice broke on her son's name. "Having him changed something in me. When I looked at him, I saw this perfect, innocent little person who needed me. And I thought maybe I wasn't worthless after all. Maybe I had value as his mother." Samuel hated that. Hated that I'd found something that made me strong. He got worse after Daniel was born, more controlling, more violent. And then one day, she couldn't continue. The memory was too fresh, too raw. Ethan's hand found hers in the darkness. "You don't have to say it." "Yes, I do. I need someone to know what he did." She took a shaky breath. "Daniel was crying. He was teething and nothing would calm him. Samuel was trying to work in his study. He came out and told me to make the boy quiet. I was trying, but Daniel just kept crying." Tears streamed down her face now. "Samuel picked him up, just grabbed him right out of my arms, and he went to the stairs and he threw him, my baby boy. He threw him down the stairs like he was nothing, like he was garbage." Ethan's arm came around her shoulders, pulling her close. "By the time I got to him, he wasn't breathing anymore. His neck was—" She sobbed, unable to continue. "I'm sorry," Ethan said, his voice rough with emotion. "I'm so damn sorry." Samuel called the doctor, told him Daniel had fallen while I was watching him, said I was careless, and everyone believed him. Because Samuel Blackwood wouldn't hurt his own child. Samuel Blackwood was a respected man. The law did nothing. The sheriff came, asked a few questions, looked at me like I was dirt, and then he left. No investigation, no justice, just my word against Samuel's, and my word was worthless. Claire wiped her eyes with her sleeve. That's when I knew I had to leave, but I was too scared, too broken. I stayed another year before I found out I was pregnant again, and I knew I couldn't let him do to this baby what he'd done to Daniel. So you ran. So I ran, stole money from his desk, took a horse, left in the middle of the night. I was going to go west to California maybe, somewhere he'd never find me. But the horse threw me on the second day. I lost the money, nearly lost the baby. By the time I made it back to Ashwood Creek, I had nothing left, just the clothes on my back and this child inside me. And you found the church. And you found me. They sat together in the firelight, two souls bound by loss and pain and the fragile hope of survival. I won't let him take this baby, Ethan said. I give you my word on that. I believe you. And she did. In this man she'd known for barely 2 days, she had more faith than she'd ever had in the husband she'd lived with for 5 years. The night deepened. Ethan kept the fire small, just enough for warmth. He'd positioned himself between Claire and the canyon entrance rifle within easy reach. You should sleep, he said. We'll move again before dawn. Will you sleep? Someone needs to keep watch. Ethan, you can't go forever without sleep. I've done harder things. But as the hours passed and Claire drifted in and out of restless sleep, she saw him fighting to keep his eyes open. Finally she spoke. Lie down, just for an hour. I'll keep watch. Claire, I'm awake anyway. The baby won't let me sleep. If I see or hear anything, I'll wake you immediately. Please, you're no good to either of us if you collapse from exhaustion. Reluctantly he agreed. He lay down near the fire, his hand still resting on his rifle. Within minutes exhaustion claimed him, and his breathing deepened into sleep. Claire sat watching him, this stranger who'd become her protector, her hope. His face looked younger in sleep, the hard lines of pain and guilt softening. She could see what he must have looked like before tragedy marked him. She kept her promise, staying awake, listening for any sound that didn't belong. But the canyon remained quiet except for the occasional hoot of an owl or the skitter of small creatures in the rocks. Just before dawn, Claire gently shook Ethan's shoulder. He woke instantly, hand tightening on the rifle. Easy, she said. Nothing wrong, just time to move. He sat up, rubbing his face. How long was I out? 3 hours, maybe 4. You should have woken me sooner. You needed it. They broke camp quickly, burying the fire and scattering the ashes. The horses were rested and ready, stamping their feet impatiently. As they prepared to mount, Ethan paused. There's something I need to say. Claire looked at him. What you told me last night about Daniel, about what Samuel did. That wasn't your fault. You know that, right? My head knows it. My heart still struggles. Same way my head knows Emma and Lucy's deaths weren't my fault, but my heart don't listen. He stepped closer. Maybe that's something we can help each other with, remembering that we're not to blame for the evil other people do. I'd like that. They mounted and rode out of the box canyon as the first light of dawn touched the eastern sky. The way ahead looked easier than the previous day's route, the canyon widening into a broader valley. But they'd barely traveled an hour when Ethan suddenly reined in his horse. What is it? Claire asked. He pointed. In the distance a dust cloud rose into the morning air. Too much dust for wild animals, too much for a single rider. They're ahead of us, Ethan said quietly. How is that possible? We were behind them yesterday. They must have circled back during the night. Damn! He scanned the canyon walls looking for options. There's a side canyon about a mile back, narrow. They might not check it. They turned the horses and rode hard, retracing their path. Claire clung to her saddle, praying the baby would forgive this rough treatment. Behind them, the dust cloud grew larger. The side canyon, Ethan remembered, was barely more than a crack in the rock face, but they managed to squeeze the horses through. It opened into a small hidden valley, completely enclosed except for the entrance they'd used. This'll have to do, Ethan said, dismounting. He helped Claire down, then led the horses deeper into the valley where they'd be hidden from view. They'd barely gotten into position when voices echoed off the canyon walls. Men, multiple men, right outside their hiding place. Ethan pulled Claire down behind a boulder, his body positioned protectively in front of hers. They could hear the riders clearly now. Lost the trail again. Damn it. Blackwood's gonna skin us if we don't find her soon. Maybe she's dead. Woman in her condition out in this heat. Then we bring back the body. He wants proof. The voices moved closer to the entrance of their hiding spot. Claire felt her heart hammering so hard she was sure they'd hear it. The baby chose that moment to kick hard. She gasped involuntarily. Ethan's hand came to her mouth, gentle but firm. His eyes met hers. Silent. Stay silent. "You hear something," one of the men said. "Just wind." "Thought I heard—" "There's nothing here. Look at this opening. Barely wide enough for a man, let alone horses. They didn't come this way. Should we check anyway?" A long pause. Claire held her breath, Ethan's hand still over her mouth. "Nah. Sun's getting high. We need to check the northern pass before noon. Move out." The voices faded. The hoofbeats receded. But Ethan didn't move, didn't let her move for long minutes after the canyon fell silent. Finally, he removed his hand from her mouth. "You okay?" Claire nodded, unable to speak. The terror of the last few minutes had left her shaking. "That was too close," Ethan said. "They're searching more thoroughly than I thought they would. What do we do?" "Stay here for the day. Wait till dark. They won't search at night, too dangerous. We'll move then." So they waited, the hours crawling by with agonizing slowness. The valley offered shade from the afternoon sun, for which Claire was grateful. They shared water and the last of Martha's bread rationing carefully. As they waited, Claire found herself watching Ethan. The way he sat so still, only his eyes moving as he scanned their surroundings. The way his hand never strayed far from his rifle. The competence in every movement, every decision. "Can I ask you something?" she said quietly. "Sure." "Do you regret it? Helping me?" He looked at her, surprised. "Why would you ask that?" "Because I've brought nothing but trouble into your life. Samuel's men hunting us. This dangerous journey. You could have just walked past me on those church steps." "Could have," he agreed. "Didn't want to." "Why not?" Ethan was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft but certain. "Because when I saw you there, scared and hurting, I saw a chance to do what I couldn't do 7 years ago, a chance to protect someone instead of failing them." He paused. "Selfish, maybe, but that's the truth of it. It's not selfish to want to help someone. Ain't it when I'm doing it as much for myself as for you?" Claire reached out, placed her hand on his arm. "Then we're helping each other. I get protection. You get—" She struggled to find the word. "Redemption," Ethan finished. "That's what I'm looking for. Some way to balance the scales for Emma and Lucy. You can't bring them back. I know. But maybe I can honor them by saving you and your baby. Maybe that means something." "It means everything," Claire said. "To me, it means everything." As the sun began to set, painting the hidden valley in shades of gold and purple, Ethan finally stood and began preparing the horses. "Time to move. With luck, we'll make good distance tonight while they're camped." They rode out into the gathering darkness, following the canyon north under a sky full of stars. The temperature dropped quickly, and Claire wrapped Martha's shawl tight around her shoulders. The night journey was eerie but oddly beautiful. The canyon walls rose dark on either side, blocking out all but a strip of star-filled sky above. The horses picked their way carefully over the rocky ground, trusting their night vision more than the riders could. Hours passed in near silence, broken only by the clip-clop of hooves and the occasional cry of a night bird. Claire dozed in her saddle, trusting her horse to follow Ethan's lead. She woke fully when Ethan called a halt. They'd reached a place where the canyon split into 3 directions. "Which way?" she asked. "Northeast Fork takes us toward the border, but it's also the most obvious route. They'll expect us to go that way." "And the others?" "West Fork dead ends in about 10 miles. East Fork goes parallel to the border but adds 2 days to the journey." Claire looked at the 3 dark openings. "What do you think we should do?" "I think we take the East Fork. It's longer but safer, and it'll put us ahead of any search parties watching the direct route." "Then that's what we do. I trust you." Those 3 words seemed to affect Ethan deeply. He nodded, not trusting himself to speak, and guided his horse toward the eastern canyon. They rode until nearly dawn, covering more ground in one night than they had in the previous day. When they finally stopped, both were exhausted, but they'd put significant distance between themselves and Samuel's men. This time they found shelter in an overhang that provided good concealment and protection from the elements. Ethan helped Claire down from her horse, steadying her when her legs refused to support her weight. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm slowing us down. You're 6 months pregnant and you just rode all night through rough country. You ain't slowing anything down. You're stronger than most men I know." The praise warmed her more than any fire could have. She settled onto the blanket he spread for her and was asleep within minutes. Ethan took up his usual position at the entrance to their shelter, watching as the eastern sky lightened with the new day. 2 days down. 1 more day to the border if they could maintain this pace. If Claire's body could take it. If the baby stayed put. If Samuel's men didn't find them first. Too many ifs. But Ethan had learned long ago that life was made of ifs and maybes. The only certainty was doing your best in the moment you had. And right now, his best was keeping this woman and her unborn child safe. He glanced back at Claire sleeping fitfully, one hand protectively over her belly, even in sleep. In 2 days, she'd become more than just someone he was protecting. She'd become someone he cared about. Someone whose survival mattered not just because he needed to redeem himself, but because she mattered. When had that happened? When had she stopped being a mission and become a person he couldn't bear to lose? He didn't have an answer. But he knew with a certainty that settled deep in his bones that he'd do whatever it took to get her to safety, even if it cost him his life. And that thought didn't scare him the way it should have. The 3rd day began with Claire waking to find Ethan already up checking the horses, scanning the horizon. The routine had become familiar now, almost comforting in its predictability. She rose slowly, every muscle protesting, and made her way to where he stood. "Morning," she said softly. He turned, and something in his expression had changed. Not softened exactly, but opened somehow. "Morning. How'd you sleep?" "Better than I expected." It was true. Despite the hard ground and the constant fear, she'd slept deeply, dreamlessly. "You got a few hours." She doubted it was even that much, but she didn't push. Instead, she helped him prepare for the day's journey, moving around each other with an ease that surprised her. They worked in comfortable silence, a rhythm developing between them that needed no words. As they mounted their horses, Ethan paused. "We should reach the border by tomorrow night, if we can keep this pace." "I can keep it," Claire said with more confidence than she felt. He nodded, believing her. That trust, unspoken but real, settled warm in her chest. They rode through the morning, the canyon gradually widening into rolling hills covered in sage and juniper. The landscape was changing, becoming less harsh, more forgiving. Or perhaps Claire was just learning to see beauty in the hardness. Around midday they stopped beside a small spring that bubbled up from the rocks. While the horses drank, Ethan refilled their canteens and Claire rested in the shade of a twisted juniper tree. "Ethan," she said after a while. "Yeah." "Why haven't you remarried? 7 years is a long time to be alone." He was silent for so long she thought she'd overstepped. Then he spoke, his voice quiet. "Didn't see the point. Didn't deserve it. Everyone deserves a second chance." "Not me. I let them die." Claire moved closer to where he crouched by the spring. "You didn't let them die. You were doing your job, protecting people who needed protection. I chose work over family. You chose to be the kind of man who stands up for those who can't stand up for themselves. That's not a sin, Ethan. That's what good men do." She knelt beside him. "Emma and Lucy, they wouldn't want you to live like this. Alone. Punishing yourself." "How do you know?" "Because that's what love does. It wants happiness for the person it loves, not endless suffering." Ethan turned to look at her fully. His gray eyes were bright with unshed tears. "You really believe that?" "I do. Just like I know Daniel, wherever he is, wouldn't want me to let Samuel destroy me. Wouldn't want me to stop fighting, stop living." She placed her hand over her belly. "That's why I'm protecting this one. Not just for him, but for Daniel's memory. To prove that Samuel doesn't get to win." Ethan reached out, hesitated, then placed his hand over hers on her belly. The baby kicked against their joined hands, strong and insistent. "Strong one." Ethan said, a smile touching his lips for the first time since she'd known him. Like his mother, you mean? Exactly like his mother. They stayed like that for a moment, connected by this tiny life between them. Then the baby kicked again harder, and Claire gasped. You all right? Fine, he's just making his presence known. She smiled. He's been more active the last few days. I think he knows we're running. Smart kid, takes after his mama. The compliment, simple as it was, brought tears to Claire's eyes. When was the last time someone had said something kind to her, called her smart, treated her like a person with value? Thank you, she whispered. For what? For seeing me, not just as someone to protect, but as a person. Samuel never did that. To him, I was just an object, something he owned. Ethan's jaw tightened. You're not an object. You're a woman who survived hell and kept her humanity. That's worth more than all of Samuel Blackwood's money and power combined. They mounted again and rode through the afternoon, but something had shifted between them. The silences felt less like absence and more like shared understanding. When they stopped to rest, they sat closer than they had before. When they spoke, it was with less guardedness. As the sun began to set, Ethan found a sheltered spot beneath an outcropping of red rock. While he tended the horses, Claire gathered the small sticks and dried sage she could find for a fire. Think it's safe? She asked when he returned. Safe enough. We're far enough ahead now. They'd have caught us by now if they were close. They built a small fire together, their hands occasionally brushing as they arranged the kindling. Each touch felt significant, now charged with meaning neither of them quite knew how to name. When the fire was burning steadily, Ethan produced 2 cans from his saddlebag. Peaches? Been saving them. You have canned peaches. Claire laughed, the sound startling them both. Where did you get canned peaches in the middle of nowhere? Doc Miller slipped them in my bag. Must have figured we'd need something sweet. They ate the peaches straight from the cans, the syrup sticky on their fingers, sweeter than anything Claire had tasted in months. She closed her eyes, savoring each bite. This is heaven, she said. It's just peaches. No, it's sitting by a fire, eating something sweet, not being afraid. That's heaven. Ethan watched her, something unreadable in his expression. You deserve a whole lot better than canned peaches and a campfire, Claire. Maybe, but right now, this is exactly what I need. After they'd eaten, Claire leaned back against the rock wall, her hands resting on her belly. The baby was moving again, rolling and stretching. Does it hurt? Ethan asked. When he moves like that? Sometimes, but mostly it's just strange, like there's a whole other person living inside me. She looked at him. Would you like to feel? Ethan hesitated. I don't want to. It's all right. Here. She took his hand and placed it on the side of her belly where the baby's movements were strongest. They waited. For a long moment nothing happened. Then the baby rolled, pushing out against Ethan's palm. His face transformed. Wonder replaced the ever-present grief, and for a moment Claire saw the man he must have been before tragedy marked him. The man who'd held his own daughter, who'd felt his wife's belly swell with their second child. Amazing, he whispered. He likes you. How can you tell? He's showing off, letting you know he's strong. The baby kicked again and Ethan laughed. Actually laughed. The sound was rusty, like something long unused, but it was genuine. He's going to be a fighter, this one. He'll have to be, Claire said quietly, with Samuel for a father. Samuel ain't his father. A father is someone who protects, who loves, who teaches. Samuel Blackwood is just the man who got you pregnant. There's a difference. Claire felt tears start. Will you, if something happens to me? Nothing's going to happen to you. But if it does, will you be that for him? A real father. Ethan's hand was still on her belly, feeling the life beneath. I promised you I'd take care of him. I meant it. I know, but I'm asking for more than just keeping him alive. I'm asking you to love him, to teach him to be a good man, the kind of man you are. Claire, please, I need to know that if I don't make it, he'll have someone who'll love him, Not for what he represents or what he can inherit, but for who he is. Ethan moved his hand from her belly to her face, cupping her cheek gently. You're going to make it. We both are. But yes, if the worst happens, I'll raise him like my own. I'll teach him right from wrong. I'll make sure he knows his mother was the bravest woman I ever met. Thank you, she breathed. They sat close, the fire burning low between them and the stars emerging overhead. Claire felt safer than she had in years, despite being hunted through the wilderness. Because safety, she was learning, wasn't about walls or locks. It was about being with someone who would stand between you and harm, no matter the cost. Tell me about Emma, she said after a while. What was she like? Ethan settled back, his shoulder touching hers. She was light. That's the best way I can describe her. Some people just carry light inside them, you know. Makes everything around them brighter. How did you meet? Church social. I was 24, new to town, didn't know a soul. She came right up to me, introduced herself, asked if I'd like some punch. I was so tongue-tied I could barely speak. She thought it was charming. Claire smiled. Love at first sight. More like love at first month. Took me that long to work up the courage to ask if I could court her proper. She said yes before I even finished asking. He paused, lost in memory. We were married 6 months later. Couldn't wait any longer. Wanted to start our life together. And Lucy came along a year after that. Emma had a hard time with the birth. 20 hours of labor. But the moment that baby girl was in her arms, Emma was smiling like it had all been worth it. His voice thickened. She was such a good mother, patient, kind. Even when Lucy was being difficult, Emma never lost her temper. Lucy was difficult. Stubborn, smart, and stubborn. That's a dangerous combination. But he smiled as he said it. She'd argue about everything. Why she had to wear shoes. Why she couldn't stay up past dark. Why horses couldn't sleep in the house. She wanted to keep a horse in the house. Said it got lonely in the barn at night. She was 9 or 10. He shook his head, the smile fading. God, I miss her. Miss them both so much sometimes I can barely breathe. Claire took his hand. Tell me something funny. A good memory. Ethan thought for a moment. Lucy's 10th birthday. We got her a new dress all fancy with ribbons. Emma spent weeks sewing it. Lucy opened it, said thank you all polite. Then the minute she thought we weren't looking, she changed back into her regular clothes and went out to muck the stables. She hated the dress. She hated being clean, hated sitting still, hated anything that kept her from running wild. He laughed softly. Emma was so frustrated, but I told her let the girl be who she is. Better to have a happy child covered in dirt than a miserable one in ribbons. You were a good father. I tried to be. The smile faded. Then I left them, and they died, so maybe I wasn't good enough after all. Ethan, no. You can't think like that. How else should I think they needed me and I wasn't there? Claire shifted to face him directly. They needed you to be the kind of man who protected the innocent, who stood up against evil, and you were that man. You are that man. That's why you're helping me now. That's different. How is it different? Ethan struggled for words. Because this time I'm choosing. I'm choosing to protect you instead of chasing duty. No, you're choosing both. You're protecting me because it's right. Because I need help, and you can give it. That's the same thing you did back then. She gripped his hand tighter. The only difference is that this time you'll be here to see it through. This time you'll get to make sure the person you're protecting survives. That's not replacing Emma and Lucy. That's honoring them. Ethan looked at her, really looked, and something in his face cracked open. How did you get so wise? Pain teaches, whether we want to learn or not. Ain't that the truth? They sat in silence, hands still joined, watching the fire burn down to embers. The night air grew cold, and Claire shivered despite the blanket around her shoulders. Come here, Ethan said, opening his arm. She hesitated only a moment before moving closer, letting him wrap his arm around her. His body was warm, solid, safe. She rested her head on his shoulder, feeling his heartbeat strong and steady against her ear. "This all right?" he asked. "More than all right." They sat like that for a long time, neither speaking, both lost in their own thoughts, but together in a way that felt right, natural, like pieces finding where they fit. "Claire," Ethan said eventually. You asked earlier why I hadn't remarried. Truth is, after Emma died, I didn't think I'd ever want to be close to anyone again. Hurt too much. Losing them hurt so much I couldn't imagine ever risking that kind of pain again. And now—" He was quiet for a long moment. "Now I'm starting to think maybe being alone hurts worse than risking loss. Maybe Emma was right when she used to say that love was always worth the risk." Claire lifted her head to look at him. In the dim firelight his face was all planes and shadows, but his eyes were clear, steady. "I think she was right too," Claire said softly. Something passed between them, then unspoken but understood. A recognition that what was growing between them was more than just gratitude or shared trauma. It was something deeper, more dangerous, more precious. Ethan's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing gently across her cheekbone. "You're beautiful. You know that." Claire felt tears start. "Samuel used to say I was ugly, that I was lucky he married me because no one else would want damaged goods." "Then Samuel Blackwood is a fool and a liar." Ethan's voice was fierce. "You're strong and brave and beautiful. Any man would be lucky to know you, let alone have you look at him the way you're looking at me right now." "How am I looking at you?" "Like maybe I'm worth something after all." "You're worth everything," she whispered. They stayed frozen like that, faces close breath mingling in the cold air. Claire could feel the heat of him, smell the sage and smoke on his clothes. She wanted to close the distance between them, to feel his lips on hers, to know what kindness tasted like. But Ethan pulled back gently. "We should get some sleep. Long day tomorrow." Claire felt the loss of his warmth like a physical ache, but she understood. Too much, too fast. They both carried too many wounds for this to be simple. "You're right," she said, trying to keep the disappointment from her voice. He helped her settle onto the bedroll, covering her with both blankets, despite her protests that he'd be cold. "I'll be fine by the fire," he said. But as Claire drifted toward sleep, she felt him lie down beside her, not touching, but close. Close enough that she could hear his breathing. Close enough that she didn't feel alone. "Ethan," she whispered. "Yeah, thank you. For tonight. For everything." "Sleep, Claire." She did, and for the first time since Daniel died, her dreams were not nightmares, but gentle memories of being held, being safe, being valued. When she woke in the deep hours of the night, Ethan was sitting up again, keeping watch. But his hand rested on her shoulder, a connection maintained even in sleep. She placed her hand over his and drifted back to sleep, a small smile on her lips. The fourth day dawned clear and cool. They rode through country that was gradually becoming greener, less hostile. Trees appeared more frequently, and water ran in small streams instead of rare seeps. "We're getting close to the border," Ethan said. "Another day, maybe day and a half. Then we'll be safe. Safer. Blackwood's got no legal jurisdiction across the line. He could still send men after you, but they'd be operating outside the law. Makes them more cautious." Claire nodded, hardly daring to hope. So close. Just a little farther. Around midday they stopped beside a clear stream to water the horses and rest. Claire knelt by the water, splashing her face, letting the coolness soothe her sunburned skin. When she turned back, Ethan was standing a few feet away, watching her with an expression she couldn't read. "What?" she asked. "Nothing. Just, you look different. Happier, maybe." "I feel different. Like maybe there's a future out there for us. For me and the baby." She paused. "For you too, if you want it." "What kind of future?" Claire stood, walked closer to him. "I don't know exactly, but maybe one where we're not always running, where the baby can grow up knowing he's wanted, where you can finally forgive yourself for things that weren't your fault." That's a lot of maybes. Maybe is better than nothing. It's better than the certainty I had with Samuel, which was just more pain and fear. She reached out, took his hand. I know this is fast. I know we barely know each other. But these last few days riding with you, talking with you, it's shown me what being with a good man feels like. And I don't want to lose that." Ethan's fingers tightened around hers. "Claire, I'm twice your age. I'm broken in ways I don't know how to fix. I've got nothing to offer you but a burned-out ranch and a past full of ghosts. You've got yourself. That's more than enough. Is a 53-year-old man with more yesterday than tomorrow really what you want? You saved my life. You're protecting my child. You treat me like I matter. Yes, that's what I want." She placed his hand on her belly. "This baby needs a father who'll love him, protect him, teach him. I need—" She struggled for words. "I need someone who sees me, who doesn't want to own me or control me, someone who makes me feel safe instead of afraid." "I see you," Ethan said quietly. "God help me. I see you so clearly it scares me." "Why does it scare you?" "Because I don't want to let you down. Don't want to fail you the way I failed them." "You won't. You can't. Because I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking you to be present, to be here with us building something new from all this broken past we're both carrying." Ethan pulled her close, carefully mindful of her belly between them. She fit against him perfectly, her head tucked under his chin. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted. "Don't know how to open up again after shutting down for so long. We'll figure it out together, one day at a time." They stood like that for a long moment, two wounded souls finding healing in each other's arms. The future was uncertain, dangerous even. But it was there, a possibility neither of them had dared imagine just days before. When they finally pulled apart, Ethan kept hold of her hand. "One day at a time," he agreed. "Starting with getting you across that border. And then we figure out the rest." It wasn't a declaration of love. It wasn't promises of forever. But it was hope, and that was more than either of them had brought to this journey. They rode through the afternoon with lighter hearts despite the danger still hunting them. The terrain continued to improve, and by evening they could see mountains in the distance. "That's the border," Ethan said, pointing. "Those mountains. Once we're in them, we're across, free. How far? We can make it by tomorrow evening if we ride hard." "Then let's ride hard." They pushed on as the sun set, riding by moonlight for several more hours before finally stopping to rest. The night was warmer here, the air softer. Spring was stronger in this place, bringing life back to the land. They made camp in a small grove of cottonwoods, the sound of running water nearby. For the first time in days, Claire felt something that might have been peace. As they settled down for the night, Ethan pulled her close without hesitation this time. She rested her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat, feeling safe. "Almost there," she whispered. "Almost there," he agreed. And tomorrow, if fortune favored them, they'd cross that invisible line into freedom, into a future that neither of them could quite see yet, but both of them were willing to fight for, together. The fifth day should have brought them to the border. Instead, it brought blood. They'd ridden hard through the night, pushing the horses to their limits. Claire clung to her saddle, every muscle screaming, but she didn't complain. Not when freedom was so close. Not when she could almost taste safety on the wind. Dawn found them in a narrow pass between two hills, the mountains visible in the distance. Another few hours, Ethan had said. Just another few hours. That's when Claire felt it. A wetness between her legs. A cramping sensation that made her gasp. "Ethan!" He turned in his saddle, saw her face go white. "What's wrong?" "I don't know. Something's—" Another cramp, stronger this time. She doubled over, nearly falling from her horse. Ethan was beside her in seconds, helping her down, easing her to the ground. He checked her over, saw the blood staining her dress. "The baby," Claire whispered, terror in her voice. "Something's wrong with the baby." Ethan's jaw tightened, but his hands were steady as he examined her. "You're spotting. Could be from the riding. Could be—" He didn't finish. Didn't want to voice the possibility that the baby might be coming early. Too early. He pulled Doc Miller's medical bag from his saddlebag, found clean cloth, tried to make her comfortable. But they had no shelter here, no protection. They were exposed in this pass, visible for miles. "We need to move," he said. "Can you ride?" "I don't think I can." Another cramp doubled her over. She cried out, unable to stop herself. Ethan made a decision. He fashioned a makeshift travois from branches and rope, secured it to his horse. Gently, carefully, he lifted Claire onto it. "Hold on," he said. "Just hold on a little longer." They moved slowly now, the travois bumping over rough ground. Each jolt sent pain through Claire's body, but there was no other choice. They had to reach the border, had to get to safety before Samuel's men found them, before the baby came. The sun climbed higher. The heat became oppressive. Claire drifted in and out of consciousness, the pain coming in waves, now regular and insistent. Around midday, Ethan spotted something that made his blood run cold. Dust on the trail behind them. Riders, moving fast. He urged his horse faster, but the travois slowed them down. The riders were gaining. "Ethan," Claire gasped, "leave me. Take the horses and go." "Not happening. They'll catch us both." "Then they catch us both." The riders crested a hill behind them. Ethan could see them clearly now. 6 men, heavily armed, and in the lead on a black stallion, Samuel Blackwood himself. Ethan's hand moved to his rifle. 18 rounds. 6 men. Not good odds, but he'd faced worse. He found a defensible position among some rocks, helped Claire off the travois, positioned her behind cover. She was barely conscious now, the pain and blood loss taking their toll. "Stay down," he said. The riders approached slowly, spreading out to surround their position. Samuel dismounted, walked forward with the casual confidence of a man who knew he'd already won. "Ethan Holloway," Samuel called out. "I don't believe we've been properly introduced. I'm Samuel Blackwood. That's my wife you've got there." "She ain't your wife no more," Ethan replied, rifle trained on Samuel's chest. "The law says different." Samuel smiled cold and calculated. "I've got papers, marriage certificate. She's my property." "People ain't property." "Tell that to the judge. Tell that to the sheriff." Samuel gestured to his men. "I've got 6 guns here. You've got 1. Simple mathematics, Mr. Holloway. You're outnumbered. Don't need good odds. Just need to make sure my first shot counts." Samuel's smile widened. "Ah, but see, that's where you've miscalculated. You shoot me, my men shoot you. Then they take Claire anyway. She loses her protector and I get what I want. Except now I'm dead, so I won't be there to make her life interesting." "What's your point?" "My point is, there's a better way. You walk away. Right now. I'll even let you keep your horse, your weapons. You ride out of here, you never see her again, and you get to live." Samuel's voice dropped, became almost friendly. "You're a lawman. You understand how the world works. Sometimes you can't save everyone. Sometimes you have to choose which battles to fight." Ethan's finger tightened on the trigger. 1 shot. He could end Samuel Blackwood right now. But then what? The other 5 men would kill him and Claire would be at their mercy. Behind him, Claire stirred. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't give me back to him." Samuel heard. "Claire, darling, this is ridiculous. You're having a medical emergency. You need a doctor, proper care. Come home with me and I'll take care of you. Take care of our baby." "You'll kill him," Claire said, her voice stronger now despite the pain. "Just like you killed Daniel." The mask slipped. For just a moment, Samuel's face showed pure rage. Then the smooth facade returned. "That was an accident. You know it was an accident. You threw him down the stairs. He fell, and you've been confused ever since. The grief, it's made you irrational." Samuel looked at his men. "Take her. Gently. She's not well." The men moved forward. Ethan fired. The lead man dropped shot through the shoulder. The others scattered, drawing weapons, returning fire. Ethan pulled Claire deeper into the rocks, using the terrain for cover. Bullets ricocheted off stone, kicking up dust and fragments. He fired again. Another man went down. 4 left plus Samuel. But Ethan was pinned down now, unable to move without exposing Claire. The men were working around the flanks trying to get a clear shot, then impossibly more gunfire, but not directed at them, at Samuel's men. Ethan risked a glance. On the ridge above he saw Doc Miller and 5 townsmen, rifles blazing. The backup had arrived. Samuel's men were caught in crossfire now. One went down. Another tried to run and was shot from his horse. The remaining 2 threw down their weapons, hands raised in surrender. Samuel stood alone, his careful plan crumbling around him. He looked at Claire, at Ethan, at the men surrounding him. "This isn't over," he said quietly. Then one of his own men, Garrett, the one who'd been shot in the shoulder, raised his pistol. Not at Ethan. At Samuel. "You said we'd be paid," Garrett snarled. "Said this would be easy money. You lied." The shot took Samuel in the chest. He staggered, looked down at the spreading red stain with something like surprise, then collapsed. Doc Miller rushed down from the ridge, moving faster than a man his age should be able to. He reached Claire first, assessed her condition with practiced eyes. "She's going into labor," he said. "Early labor. We need to get her somewhere safe. Now." Ethan looked at Samuel's body lying in the dust. The man who'd terrorized Claire, who'd killed their son, who'd hunted them across 200 miles of hard country. Dead, shot by his own man. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it just felt like survival. They fashioned a better travois, got Claire loaded with Doc's help. The townsmen took charge of the prisoners of Samuel's body. Someone would have to notify the authorities, deal with the legal aftermath. But Ethan's only concern was getting Claire to safety. Getting her somewhere she could have this baby without dying in the process. Doc knew a place. A homestead an hour's ride away across the border. A woman there, Martha's sister, who'd helped with births before. It wasn't ideal, but it would have to do. They rode hard, racing the sun, and Claire's labor both. She was in full contractions now, coming every few minutes, her screams echoing across the empty land. "Hold on," Ethan kept saying. "Just hold on." But he didn't know if he was talking to Claire or himself. They reached the homestead as the sun touched the western horizon. A sturdy woman came out, took one look at Claire, and started issuing orders. "Get her inside. Boil water. I need clean sheets, towels, whatever you've got." They carried Claire into the house, laid her on a bed. The woman, Sarah was her name, examined her quickly. "Baby's coming now," she said. "No stopping it. She's 6 months along." "About that," Ethan said. "Then we pray. That's all we can do. Pray the baby's strong enough to survive." The next hours were the longest of Ethan's life. Claire's screams tore through him like physical wounds. He held her hand, let her squeeze until his bones ground together, whispered encouragement that felt hollow even to his own ears. "You can do this. You're strong. Just a little more. 18 hours. That's how long it took. 18 hours of Claire fighting for her life, for her baby's life. 18 hours of blood and pain, and Ethan feeling more helpless than he'd ever felt holding a gun. Finally, as dawn broke on the 6th day, a different sound filled the room. A baby's cry, thin, weak, but unmistakably alive. "It's a boy," Sarah said, holding up a tiny red-faced infant. "Premature but breathing. He's got a chance." She cleaned the baby quickly, wrapped him in warm cloths, placed him on Claire's chest. Claire looked down at her son, tears streaming down her exhausted face. "Daniel," she whispered. "We'll call him Daniel, after his brother." Ethan looked at the tiny life no bigger than his 2 hands together, fighting to breathe, fighting to live, and something inside him broke and reformed at the same time. "Hey there, little man," he said softly. "Welcome to the world. You gave us quite a scare." The baby's eyes opened, unfocused but searching. His tiny hand reached out, found Ethan's finger, gripped it with surprising strength. "He knows you," Claire said, smiling despite her exhaustion. "He knows his father." Ethan couldn't speak, couldn't find words for what he was feeling. After 7 years of death and guilt and emptiness, here was life. Here was hope. Here was a reason to keep going. "I've got you," he finally managed. "Both of you, I've got you." Doc Miller appeared in the doorway looking as exhausted as they all felt. "Samuel's dead," he confirmed. "Shot by his own man. There'll be an inquest, but with all the witnesses shouldn't be a problem. Claire's free. Legally free." Claire closed her eyes, relief washing over her. "It's really over." "It's really over," Doc agreed. But it wasn't over. Not quite. Because somewhere in Claire's battered body something had torn during the birth. Sarah saw it first, the blood that wouldn't stop flowing. "We've got a problem," she said quietly to Doc. They worked on Claire while Ethan held the baby, watching helplessly as the two people who knew medicine tried to save the woman he loved. And that's when it hit him. He loved her. Loved this woman he'd known less than a week. Loved her courage, her strength, her refusal to give up even when everything seemed hopeless. "Don't you die on me," he said, though Claire couldn't hear him. "Don't you dare die now, not after everything, not when we finally made it." For 3 hours her life hung in the balance. Then slowly the bleeding stopped. Her color improved, her breathing steadied. "She'll make it," Sarah said. "She's strong, stronger than most." Ethan sagged with relief, still holding baby Daniel, who'd fallen asleep against his chest. They stayed at Sarah's homestead for 2 weeks while Claire recovered. Slow days of healing, of learning how to be a mother to a premature infant, of figuring out what came next. Ethan spent those days taking care of them both. Feeding Claire when she was too weak to hold a spoon. Walking the floor with Daniel when he cried. Learning how to change diapers and warm milk and all the small essential tasks of keeping a tiny human alive. And somewhere in those 2 weeks they became a family. Not by law yet, not by any formal declaration, but by choice, by shared struggle, by love that had grown in the most unlikely of places. 3 months later, Claire stood on the porch of Ethan's ranch. Daniel asleep in her arms, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and purple. The baby had gained weight, grown stronger, his premature start just a memory now in the healthy weight of him. The ranch looked different. Ethan had spent the last months rebuilding, repairing, transforming the place from a monument to the past into a home for the future. The barn had a new roof. The fences were mended, and beside the 2 crosses marking Emma and Lucy's graves, roses bloomed. Red and white, beautiful and alive. She heard the door open behind her. Ethan emerged, moved to stand beside her. His arm came around her waist, natural as breathing now. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That I never thought I'd feel this way. Safe, happy, home." "You are home, both of you." Daniel stirred, made a small sound. Ethan took him, cradled the baby against his chest with the practiced ease of 3 months' experience. "Doc Miller's coming by tomorrow," Ethan said. "Said he's got some papers for us to sign." "What kind of papers?" "Marriage papers, if you still want to." Claire turned to look at him. "If I still want to, Ethan Holloway, are you asking me to marry you?" "Asking again, I suppose. Properly this time." He shifted Daniel to one arm, took Claire's hand with the other. "Claire Morgan, will you marry me? Will you let me be Daniel's father? Will you build a life here with me?" "I thought you'd never ask properly," she smiled. "Yes, to all of it, yes." They kissed gentle and sweet with their son between them, a family finally official. The wedding was small. Just Doc Miller, Martha Brennan, Sarah, and a few townspeople who'd helped them. They stood in front of the ranch house, the mountains visible in the distance, the place where they'd found freedom. Father Murphy, who'd traveled from Ashwood Creek, performed the ceremony. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony." Ethan wore his best clothes, hair combed, boots polished. Claire wore a simple dress that Martha had made blue as the Texas sky. She carried Daniel, who watched the proceedings with solemn eyes, as if he understood the importance of the moment. "Do you, Ethan Holloway, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do, now and forever." "Do you, Claire Morgan, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Claire looked at Ethan, at Daniel, at the life they'd built from nothing but determination and hope. "I do." and I am no longer his. I am mine, and I choose you." The words echoed her declaration from that day in the canyon, but with new meaning now. She wasn't just refusing to be Samuel's property. She was claiming her own identity, her own choices, her own future. "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Ethan kissed her, careful of the baby between them, and the small gathering erupted in applause. "Ladies and gentlemen," Father Murphy said with a smile, "I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Holloway and young Daniel Holloway." They celebrated into the evening, simple food and music and laughter. It was everything Claire had never had with Samuel. Joy instead of fear, celebration instead of control, love instead of possession. As the guests departed and night fell, Ethan and Claire sat on their porch, Daniel asleep inside. "Happy?" Ethan asked. "Happier than I ever thought possible." "Good, because I've got something to tell you." Claire's heart jumped. "What?" "Doc Miller talked to me today. There's a position available, teaching at the U.S. Marshal Training Academy, 2 weeks a year, spring and fall. They want me to teach the new recruits." "What would you teach them?" "That duty and family don't have to be enemies, that being a lawman means protecting the innocent, including the ones in your own home." He paused. "That sometimes the people who need protection most are the ones right in front of you." Claire smiled. "Emma and Lucy would be proud." "I think so too. So would Daniel. Your Daniel." He took her hand. "I figure this way their deaths mean something. I can help make sure other lawmen don't make the mistakes I did." "When would you start?" "Not till spring. Got a family to take care of first, a ranch to run, a son to raise." "2 sons," Claire said quietly. Ethan looked at her confused. She took his hand, placed it on her stomach. "I'm pregnant, about 2 months along." Ethan's eyes widened. "You're sure?" "Doc confirmed it today. That's why he's bringing those papers tomorrow. He wanted to make sure I was healthy first." "Are you healthy?" "Strong as an ox, according to Doc. This time will be different. No running, no stress. Just a normal pregnancy in a safe home." Ethan pulled her close, careful and reverent. "Another baby. I can't believe it." "Believe it? We're going to need a bigger house." They sat together under the stars, planning a future that had seemed impossible just months before. A house full of children, a ranch that thrived, a marriage built on choice and respect and love. "What should we name this one?" Ethan asked. "If it's a girl, I'd like to call her Emma, after your wife. And if it's a boy, maybe Thomas, after your father." "Emma Rose," Ethan said softly. "Lucy always wanted a sister named Rose." "Then Emma Rose it is." 6 months later, winter had settled over the ranch. Claire was 8 months pregnant now, moving slowly but contentedly. Daniel had grown into a happy, healthy baby who laughed at everything and was starting to say simple words. Ethan had gone to the training academy for his first 2-week session, teaching young marshals about balance, about family, about the true meaning of protection. He'd come back energized, feeling like he'd found a new purpose. They'd added a room to the house, painted it soft yellow, ready for Emma Rose when she arrived. The nursery had a rocking chair. Ethan had built a crib Doc Miller had donated, and curtains Martha had sewn. Everything was perfect. Then one evening in early January, there was a knock at the door. Ethan answered, expecting Doc Miller or maybe Martha checking on Claire. Instead, he found Sheriff Bennett looking grim. "Evening, Ethan." "Sheriff, what brings you out?" "Got some news. Thought you should hear it direct from me." Claire appeared behind Ethan Daniel on her hip. "What kind of news?" she asked. "It's about Samuel Blackwood." Claire's face went pale. "He's dead. We saw him die." "He was dead. For about 3 minutes. Then one of his men, the one who shot him, tried to revive him. Turns out the bullet missed his heart. Went through his lung instead. Samuel survived." The words hung in the air like poison. "Where is he now?" Ethan asked, voice deadly calm. "That's the thing. He recovered in Mexico, was in prison there awaiting trial. But 2 weeks ago—" The sheriff hesitated. "He escaped. killed 2 guards, crossed back into Texas. He's coming here, Claire whispered. Don't know for sure, but yes, we think he might be, which is why I'm here, to warn you, to tell you we've got deputies watching the main roads. But a man like Samuel, he's not going to come the obvious way. Ethan closed the door after the sheriff left, locked it, checked the windows. Claire sat down, shaking one hand on her belly. He won't stop, she said. He'll never stop. Then neither will I. Ethan pulled his rifle from above the mantel, checked the ammunition, pulled his old marshal's badge from a drawer, pinned it to his shirt. You're going after him. No, I'm staying right here, protecting you. But if he comes here, I'll be ready. For 3 days they waited. 3 days of tension, of jumping at every sound, of Ethan keeping watch through the nights while Claire tried to sleep. On the 4th night it happened. Claire woke to a sound, soft, almost imperceptible, but wrong. She reached for Ethan, found his side of the bed empty. She got up carefully, her pregnant belly making her clumsy, moved to the window, looked out. A figure stood by the graves, tall, familiar, wearing a long coat despite the cold. Samuel. Her heart hammered. Where was Ethan? Where was Daniel? She heard a cry. Daniel's cry. Coming from the nursery. She rushed there, found the door open, the window open, and Samuel standing beside the crib, holding Daniel. "Hello, wife," Samuel said softly. "I've missed you." Claire stood frozen. Daniel reached for her, sensing her distress, starting to cry harder. "Put him down," Claire said, voice steady despite her terror. "This is my son, isn't it? My heir." Samuel looked at the baby with cold appraisal. "Small for 6 months. He's not yours. Put him down." "I think not. You see, I've learned something in the last few months. I don't need you, Claire. I just need the baby, an heir. The will doesn't specify the mother has to be alive." "You're insane." "I'm practical." Samuel moved toward the window. "I'll raise him, teach him properly, make him strong, not like that weakling Daniel who cried all the time." That's when Ethan appeared in the doorway, gun drawn, face like stone. "Put the baby down, Samuel." Samuel turned, smiled. "Ah, the hero, right on cue. Put him down, last warning. You'll shoot me with the baby in my arms. What if you miss? What if you hit him instead?" Samuel held Daniel out slightly. "Are you willing to take that risk?" Ethan's gun never wavered. Claire moved to the side. She did, understanding, giving Ethan a clear line of sight. "Very clever," Samuel said, "but still not clever enough. You shoot me, I drop the baby. From this window it's a 12-foot fall. He might survive. He might not. Are you willing to gamble his life?" "No," Ethan said, "but I am willing to gamble yours." He fired, not at Samuel, at the wall beside him. The bullet ricocheted off the stone chimney that ran up the outside wall, changing angle, and slammed into Samuel's shoulder. Samuel jerked, dropped Daniel. Claire dove forward, caught their son before he could fall, rolled with him, protecting him with her body. Ethan was on Samuel in seconds, gun pressed to his temple. "You move, you die. You breathe wrong, you die. You even think about touching my family again, I will end you." Samuel looked up at him, blood streaming from his shoulder, and laughed. "You won't kill me. You're a lawman. You follow the rules." "I was a lawman. Now I'm a father, and fathers protect their children, no matter what." He pulled Samuel to his feet, tied his hands with rope, secured him to the bed frame. "Claire, take Daniel. Lock yourself in our room. Don't come out until I tell you." She did, holding their crying son, her own tears mixing with his. Sheriff Bennett arrived an hour later with 4 deputies. They took Samuel into custody, this time ensuring he'd be tried in Texas in a jail that couldn't be escaped. "We'll make sure he never sees freedom again," Bennett promised. Between the murder charge for the guards, the kidnapping attempt, and the original charges from Claire's testimony, he's looking at hanging. After they left, Ethan went to the bedroom. Claire sat on the bed, still holding Daniel, rocking him gently. "It's over," Ethan said. "This time it's really over." "How can you be sure?" "Because I'm going to that trial. I'm going to testify. And I'm going to make sure that every person on that jury understands exactly what Samuel Blackwood is. A monster. And monsters don't get second chances. Claire looked at her husband, at the fierce determination in his eyes, and believed him. "Thank you," she whispered, "for saving us. Again. Always. That's my job now. Protecting my family. Always." Spring came early that year, bringing warmth and new life to the ranch. Emma Rose Holloway was born on a bright morning in March, her arrival smooth and uncomplicated, the complete opposite of Daniel's traumatic birth. Claire held her daughter, marveling at the tiny features, the dark hair, the way she looked so much like Ethan. "She's perfect," Claire breathed. "She's got Emma's eyes," Ethan said, voice thick with emotion, "green like spring grass. Lucy would have loved her." Yes, she would have. They named her Emma Rose as planned, with Lucy as her middle name. Emma Rose Lucy Holloway. A name carrying the weight of memory and the lightness of hope. Daniel, now nearly a year old, looked at his sister with suspicion, at first, then curiosity, then protective love. He'd sit beside her crib, babbling to her in his own language, patting her head gently. "Gentle Danny," Claire would remind him, but the boy was always gentle, as if he understood, even at his young age, how precious life was. Samuel's trial came and went. Claire testified, standing in front of a courtroom full of people telling her story. The cellar, the beatings, Daniel's death, the hunting, the attempted kidnapping. Ethan testified. Doc Miller testified. Martha testified. The evidence was overwhelming. Samuel Blackwood was sentenced to hang. Claire didn't attend the execution, didn't want that image in her mind. But Ethan did, stood there as witness, making sure the man who'd terrorized Claire could never hurt anyone again. When he came home that evening, Claire was on the porch nursing Emma Rose Daniel, playing at her feet. "It's done," Ethan said simply. "How do you feel?" "Relieved. Justice was served. Not revenge, justice." He sat beside her. That's what Emma would have wanted, what Lucy would have wanted, to know that the law worked, that evil was punished. "Are you at peace?" Ethan looked at his family, at Claire strong and beautiful and alive, at Daniel healthy and happy, at Emma Rose nursing contentedly, already so loved. "Not yet," he said honestly, "but I'm getting there." 1 month later, on a warm spring day, Ethan announced he wanted to go somewhere. "Where?" Claire asked. "The river, where I proposed to Emma, where I scattered her ashes and Lucy's." He paused. "I need to go there, need to say something. Can I come? I'd like that." They went together, leaving the children with Martha for the afternoon, rode out to the river that wound through the hills north of the ranch. The same place where Ethan and Emma had spent so many happy days, the same place where he'd said goodbye to them after the fire. They stood on the bank watching the water flow. Ethan was quiet for a long time. Finally he spoke. "Emma, Lucy, I'm here to tell you something. Something I should have said 7 years ago, but wasn't ready to." Claire stood beside him, hand in his, giving him strength. "I forgive myself for not being there, for choosing duty over staying home, for surviving when you didn't." His voice broke. "I've carried this guilt for so long, thinking it's what I deserved, thinking I didn't have the right to be happy again." He paused, gathered himself. "But I've learned something. From Claire, from our children, from the life we're building. I've learned that guilt isn't the same as love, that punishing myself doesn't honor your memory. Living does. Loving again does. Being the man you believed I was, that honors you." Tears streamed down his face. "So I'm letting go. Not of you. Never of you. I'll carry you with me always in my heart and my memories. But I'm letting go of the guilt, of the blame, of the punishment." He knelt, placed his hand on the earth. "Thank you for the time we had. Thank you for making me a father. Thank you for teaching me what love means. And thank you for believing I could be better than I thought I was." He stood, turned to Claire. "I'm ready now. Ready to live. Really live. Not just exist. Not just survive. But thrive." Claire wrapped her arms around him, held him while he cried. Tears of grief, yes, but also tears of release, of freedom, of finally being able to breathe without the crushing weight of guilt. "They're proud of you," she whispered. "Emma and Lucy, wherever they are, they're proud." "I hope so. I know so." They rode back to the ranch as the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant colors. Ethan felt lighter than he had in 7 years, like he'd been carrying stones in his pockets and had finally set them down. That night they sat on the porch. Daniel was asleep. Emma Rose nursed contentedly. The ranch spread around them, home and sanctuary both. "Tell me something," Claire said. "What do you see when you look at the future now?" Ethan thought about it. "I see Daniel growing up, learning to ride, learning to be a good man. I see Emma Rose with dirt on her face and skinned knees running wild like Lucy used to. I see more children maybe, if we're blessed. I see teaching at the academy. I see this ranch thriving. I see you growing old beside me, still beautiful, still strong. That's a good future. The best future, the one I never thought I'd have." He looked at her. "What do you see?" "I see safety, real safety. Not walls or locks, but love. I see children who grow up knowing they're valued, who never know what it's like to be afraid in their own home. I see being partners with you building this life together. I see being free." "You are free." "I know. Finally, I know." They sat in comfortable silence, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. Somewhere in the night an owl called. The sound was peaceful, not eerie. Everything was different now. "Ethan," Claire said. "Yeah, I want to plant something, a tree, between the house and Emma and Lucy's graves, something that connects past and future, that grows as our family grows." "What kind of tree?" "An apple tree. You said Lucy wanted an apple tree to climb." Ethan smiled, the memory bittersweet, but no longer agonizing. "She did. Used to draw pictures of the tree she wanted. Huge thing with branches perfect for climbing." "Then let's give her that. Let's plant an apple tree, for Lucy, for all of us." The next day, Doc Miller came by with a young apple sapling. Together they planted it in the space between the house and the graves, dug the hole deep, watered it well, packed the earth around it. Daniel helped patting the dirt with his small hands. Even Emma Rose was there, wrapped in a blanket, watching with solemn eyes. "This tree," Ethan said, his hand on the slender trunk, "is for Lucy, for Emma, for Daniel, who we lost, for all the ones who didn't get to see this future. May it grow strong. May it give shade and fruit. May it remind us that life goes on. And that love goes on," Claire added, "that we carry them with us always." They stood together, a family gathered around a symbol of hope. The crosses marked the past. The tree would grow into the future. Both were part of who they were. Martha arrived that afternoon with news. "There's a woman in town," she said. "Young thing, married to a man like Samuel. She came to me, asked if there was somewhere safe she could go." Claire and Ethan looked at each other. "Bring her here," Claire said. "She can stay with us until she's ready to leave, until she has a plan." "You're sure?" Martha asked. "It could be dangerous." "We've handled dangerous before," Ethan said. "And besides, this is what we do now. We help people who need it." Over the next months, their ranch became something unexpected. A sanctuary. Word spread quietly through networks of women who knew what it meant to be trapped, to be afraid. Women came, some with children, some pregnant, some just needing a place to breathe without fear. Claire helped them plan, gave them resources, showed them it was possible to escape, to survive, to thrive. Ethan taught them to shoot, to ride, to defend themselves if they needed to. And he used his connections as a former marshal to help them disappear, to start over safely. Their home was full of voices and laughter and sometimes tears, full of life in all its messy, complicated, beautiful reality. Daniel grew, started walking, then running, then climbing everything in sight. Emma Rose followed, determined to keep up with her brother. They were wild and happy and safe. And Ethan, teaching at the academy twice a year, shared his story, told young marshals about the cost of choosing duty over family, about balance, about the importance of protecting the vulnerable, including those in your own home. You want to know what makes a good lawman, he'd tell them. It's not being the fastest gun or the best tracker. It's knowing what's worth protecting. And sometimes what's worth protecting most is right in front of you. The students listened. Some of them had families, some didn't yet, but they all understood the weight of his words. 2 years after Emma Rose was born, Claire discovered she was pregnant again. This time, twins. 2 boys born healthy and strong in the summer heat. They named them Thomas and Matthew. Thomas after Ethan's father, Matthew after Emma's father. A bridge between families, between past and present. The ranch had to expand. More rooms, more space. The apple tree had grown tall enough for Daniel to start learning to climb, with Ethan spotting him, making sure he was safe. Life was full. Chaotic sometimes, exhausting often, but never ever empty. 5 years after that night in the rain when Ethan found Claire on the church steps, they stood together looking at what they'd built. The ranch was thriving. The children were healthy. The women they'd helped had gone on to build their own lives. The apple tree bore fruit, now small and tart, but perfect for pies. "Hard to believe it's been 5 years, Claire said. "Feels like a lifetime, feels like yesterday." Ethan pulled her close. "Thank you." "For what?" "For fighting, for surviving, for choosing me, for building this life with me. Thank you for seeing me on those church steps, for not walking past, for protecting me even when it cost you everything." "It cost me nothing. It gave me everything." They kissed slow and sweet while their children played around them. Daniel was 6 now, helping with the horses. Emma Rose was 4, already showing signs of Lucy's stubbornness and curiosity. The twins were 2, getting into everything, making mischief wherever they went. This was home. This was family. This was the future neither of them had dared to dream of. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything. That evening, as the sun set over the ranch, Ethan stood by the 2 crosses and the thriving apple tree. He'd come here every day for 5 years, keeping the graves tended, the roses blooming. "Emma, Lucy, I wanted you to know something. I'm happy, really happy. Not the kind of happy that forgets you, the kind that honors you, the kind that says your lives mattered, your love mattered, and because of that I can love again." He paused, watching the light fade. "Claire's pregnant again. 1 more. We don't know if it's a boy or girl yet. But if it's a girl, we're thinking of naming her Grace, for second chances, for the grace that brought us together." The wind rustled through the apple tree, making the leaves whisper. "I think you'd like her, Claire. She's strong like you, Emma, brave. She's been through hell and came out stronger, and our kids, you'd love them. Daniel's got your smile, Emma. Emma Rose has Lucy's curiosity. The twins are wild, just wild, but good boys, good hearts." He stood there in the gathering dark, feeling at peace. Finally, at peace. "I have to go. Family's waiting. But I'll be back tomorrow. I'm always back. Because you're part of me, part of us. And that's how it should be." He walked back to the house where light spilled from the windows, where voices called and children laughed, and Claire waited. The last ride home was complete. Not a ride to death, but to life, to love, to a future bright with possibility. Ethan Holloway, once dead inside, was finally fully alive. And the ghosts that had haunted him for 7 years were at rest, their memory a blessing instead of a curse. The story that began in rain and fear and desperation had become something beautiful, a family, a home, a second chance at the happiness he'd thought was lost forever. And in the end, that was all anyone could ask for. To be seen, to be loved, to be given the chance to start again. They had that chance, and they were making the most of every single day.